So, what if the greatest transformation in your life doesn't begin when you become someone new, but when you finally accept the person you've always been?
That is quite the question.
Right. I mean, that exact question is how today's source material opens.
Yeah,
And honestly, it completely stopped me in my tracks.
it's definitely a pattern interrupt.
It really is. So today we are taking a deep dive into a really powerful text. It's titled Bloom by Bloom, Scar by Scar, The Power of Self-Love. And, you know, our mission today is to just cut through all the superficial noise about this theme.
Because there is a lot of noise out there.
Oh, so much. Let's face it, you and I both know self-love is like a lot more complicated than face masks and bubble baths
Yeah.
or, buying yourself an expensive iced coffee.
Yeah, those are nice, but they aren't the work.
Exactly. We are really trying to unpack this idea of a radical and honestly often really uncomfortable acceptance of who you already are. Basically, stopping this habit we all have of constantly treating ourselves like a project that's behind schedule.
I love that phrasing, a project behind schedule.
Thanks, yeah. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because what this text is suggesting is a massive structural paradigm shift for how we view personal growth.
It absolutely is a paradigm shift, and honestly, it's a necessary intervention at this point.
Because of how we currently look at self-improvement.
Exactly. We operate in a culture heavily dominated by this deficit model of self-improvement.
Okay, a deficit model, meaning what exactly?
Meaning the baseline assumption that's beamed into your brain all day long is that you are fundamentally a problem to be solved.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you see a million ads a day telling you exactly that.
Right. And what this text does immediately with that opening provocation is just dismantle that assumption entirely. It argues that the relentless, exhausting pursuit of a quote-unquote new you is not actually a mechanism for growth.
Really? Even though that's what we're all taught.
Yeah, the author argues that in many cases, it's the very psychological barrier that is preventing you from evolving because, you are trying to build a future on a foundation of self-rejection.
Oh, wow. Building on a foundation of self-rejection, that is heavy.
It is.
Right, so the text sets up what we could call the transformation paradox. But before we get into the actual mechanisms of that, we have to look at the friction this concept creates.
Oh, there's definitely friction.
Yeah, because when the text talks about self-love, it's demanding the profound acceptance of every single part of yourself.
Every part, not just the good stuff.
Right, your strengths, sure, that's the easy part, but also your weaknesses, your massive failures, the parts of your personality that, genuinely annoy your friends. It's a holistic embrace.
It is.
But hold on. If we just accept our flaws entirely, like if we look at our bad habits and say, well, this is just who I am, doesn't that inherently mean we stop trying to improve?
That is the classic pushback.
I mean, how do you balance this radical acceptance with the genuine necessity to change toxic behavior? Like, if I accept that I'm chronically late or that I have a really short temper, aren't I just giving myself a free pass?
That is the exact psychological friction point. Our ego completely pushes back against radical acceptance because we have this false belief that self-criticism is the engine of change.
Right. We think we have to be mean to ourselves to get anything done.
Exactly. We think, like, if I don't hate this part of myself, I just won't be motivated to fix it. But
Yeah.
the text argues the exact opposite. Acceptance does not equal resignation.
Okay, so what does it equal?
It is about neutralizing the shame associated with your flaws.
But why does neutralizing the shame matter mechanically, like in the brain?
Because of cognitive bandwidth. When you are trying to change a behavior because you actively loathe that part of yourself, a massive portion of your executive function is literally consumed by internal conflict.
So you're basically distracted by your own self-hatred.
You are literally fighting your own brain. Shame triggers a stress response. And we know that shuts down the learning centers of your brain and pushes you straight into fight, flight, or freeze.
Oh, wow. So you physically can't learn from a mistake if you're drowning in shame.
Precisely. You cannot genuinely grow from a state of constant neurological threat. But if you accept a flaw as a neutral, objective fact of your current state, like saying, I struggle with emotional regulation instead of I'm a broken, toxic person, you instantly lower your cortisol.
You calm the system down.
Right. You free up the cognitive energy that's actually required to observe the behavior, understand your triggers, and, map out a plan to change.
That makes so much sense.
And the source emphasizes that these imperfections are not evidence of failure. They are, as the author says, proof of a life fully lived. You just cannot renovate a house if you're actively setting fire to the foundation.
Man, that distinction between objective observation and toxic rumination is huge. It completely shifts the motivation from self-loathing to, like, self-stewardship.
Self-stewardship, I like that.
So once we get past that initial resistance and establish that growth actually requires acceptance, we run into the reality of how that growth
It's
happens.
the actual mechanics of it.
Exactly. And this is where the text introduces the first half of its central metaphor, bloom by bloom. The source literally compares the pacing of human psychological growth to a flower blooming.
And what's fascinating here is the actual biology of how a flower blooms. We tend to think of it as this magical, instantaneous popping open.
Right? Like time-lapse photography makes it look so fast.
Exactly. But in reality, it is an incredibly rigorous, methodical process. A bloom is driven by turgor pressure.
Turgor pressure.
Yeah, basically water filling the plant cells, creating internal pressure that slowly, deliberately forces the petals to unfold.
Oh, so it's a physical force.
Yes. It requires the sequential expansion of millions of cells.
Yeah.
The plant is constantly responding to the environment, gathering nutrients, and slowly revealing itself.
It's doing a lot of invisible work.
Exactly. And the text takes this biological reality and maps it directly onto human transformation. It asserts that deep healing and self-discovery happen precisely this way. Sequentially, one day at a time, bloom by bloom.
So it's a process, not a light switch.
Right. It is not an event. It is an organic process.
I really, really appreciate that imagery. But we do have to acknowledge that it runs completely counter to modern human expectations.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, we have conditioned ourselves to treat personal growth like a smartphone software update.
A software update, yes, that is the perfect way to describe it.
Right, like we want to plug ourselves in at night, read the right self-help book, maybe listen to the right deep dive, and just wake up the next morning as version 2.0.
We want the bugs fixed overnight.
Exactly. We expect a little progress bar in the sky. But this text is reminding us that we are organic. We don't get digital patches for our bad habits. We require, sunlight, water, and an agonizing amount of patience.
And that expectation, the software update mentality, is arguably the primary reason people burn out on self-improvement.
Because it's taking too long.
Because when you apply a digital timeline to a biological and psychological entity, you are just engineering your own disappointment.
You're setting yourself up to fail.
Right. The brain literally has to rewire its neural pathways to form a new habit or perspective. That is physical tissue remodeling up there, and that takes time.
It's physical work.
It is. The bloom by bloom framework is a rigorous call for patience. It is the text giving you permission to be in a state of becoming.
I love that. A state of becoming.
Just because you haven't fully opened up, or just because you are struggling with a setback, it doesn't mean the process has failed. The unfolding itself, the internal pressure building and pushing you forward, that is the growth.
Okay, but let's push this framework a bit further, because a garden isn't just a controlled environment with perfect sunlight.
No, it's exposed to the elements.
Exactly. The software update mentality hits a brick wall the second we experience actual unavoidable pain or trauma. The storms roll in.
Yeah.
So how does this philosophy hold up when things get dark?
That's the crucial pivot in the book.
Right, which brings us directly to the second half of the source's title, Scar by Scar. Because if the bloom is our deliberate growth, the scar is what happens when that growth is violently interrupted.
Exactly. And this is where the text proves it isn't just relying on, fragile, sunny optimism. It forces us to confront the permanence of pain.
It doesn't shy away from the hard stuff.
Not at all. The source offers a powerful neurological and psychological reframing of our setbacks. It argues that every trauma, every massive failure has forced an adaptation.
An adaptation.
Yes, scars are not deformities. They are the physical or emotional markers that map your specific survival.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Placing those two images side by side, the incredibly delicate, vulnerable opening of a flower petal, right alongside the rugged, protective, biological reality of a scar.
It's a stark contrast.
It really is. It's a brilliant way of illustrating that self-love is not just about being soft and gentle with yourself. It requires a profound toughness.
Yes, grit.
Right? It's honoring the fact that you have survived brutal things, and those survivals have left marks.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at the psychological damage caused by how society tells us to manage those scars.
Which is usually to hide them, right?
Exactly. The cultural mandate is concealment. I mean, we use literal concealer for our physical imperfections, and we use metaphorical filters for our emotional ones.
We curate everything.
We do. We curate our lives to present a seamless, unblemished narrative online. And the underlying message there is that a scar, whether it's a failure, a divorce, a bankruptcy, a period of severe depression, diminishes your social or emotional value.
Like it makes you damaged goods.
Right. But the text directly attacks this premise. It argues that by hiding your scars, you are actively suppressing the most undeniable evidence of your own resilience.
And from a biological standpoint, a scar is literally stronger than the skin it replaces, right?
Yeah.
It's cross-linked collagen that's specifically designed to protect a vulnerability.
Precisely. It is an evolutionary adaptation. The body responds to injury by weaving a denser, tougher network of tissue.
So it's an upgrade in durability.
Yes. And psychologically, it is the exact same mechanism. Overcoming adversity alters your neuroplasticity. It builds stress inoculation.
Direct inoculation. Wow.
The text is demanding that you stop viewing these adaptations as defects. Your scars do not diminish your beauty. They reveal your strength. Your flaws make you uniquely human.
That is so powerful.
If you reject your scars, you are rejecting the very strength that allowed you to survive long enough to even have this conversation.
It really reframes self-love from a passive state of just feeling good into a rigorous discipline of acknowledging reality.
A discipline, yes.
So we have this comprehensive philosophical framework now. We have the bloom, which teaches us the organic, patient pacing of change. And we have the scar, which teaches us the value of our pain and resilience.
The two halves of the whole.
Right. But I want to pivot now to the mechanics of this, because the text gets incredibly grounded in its final chapters. It's easy to talk about this stuff from a 10,000-foot view, but what does this all mean for you, the listener, tomorrow morning?
When the rubber meets the road.
Exactly. When the alarm goes off, how do you actually do radical self-acceptance?
Well, the source outlines a framework for daily practice, breaking it down into actionable disciplines. And I use the word discipline intentionally because, as we established, this pushes against our default settings.
It could be work.
It is. The first explicit directive is to stop measuring yourself against impossible standards.
Okay, but how? I mean, seriously, how do we do that? Because those standards aren't just abstract ideas floating around. They are beamed directly into our pockets 24/7 through social media, advertising, culture. We are saturated in them.
We are, and this is where we have to understand the evolutionary trap we are currently stuck in.
An evolutionary trap.
Yeah, our brains are hardwired to assess our social rank. In a tribal setting, understanding where you stood in the hierarchy was quite literally a matter of life and death. You got access to food and shelter based on your rank.
So we are built to compare ourselves to others.
We are. Your brain wants to compare. But today, that survival mechanism is completely hijacked.
Because of the internet.
Exactly. You aren't comparing yourself to the 50 people in your local village anymore. You are comparing your messy, behind-the-scenes reality to the heavily curated, digitally altered highlight reels of 8 billion people.
Which is an unwinnable game.
Totally unwinnable. So the text emphasizes that you have to actively interrupt that habit loop. When you feel that spike of inadequacy while scrolling, you have to consciously recognize it as a biological glitch, not a reflection of your actual worth. You have to actively disengage the behavior.
Which leads directly to the text's second discipline, right?
Yeah.
Stopping the comparison of your unique journey to someone else's timeline.
Right. And if we carry the biological metaphor forward, the text notes that a rose doesn't look at a sunflower and feel inadequate.
That's a great image.
They have entirely different cellular instructions, different timelines, and different environmental needs. If you are blooming at your own pace, applying someone else's timeline to your life is scientifically absurd. It just creates unnecessary suffering.
It really does. Okay, I want to challenge the third practical step the text brings up, which is forgiving yourself for past mistakes.
Okay, let's hear it.
We touched on this earlier, but I want to dig a little deeper. Because if a scar is proof of survival, the mistake that caused the scar is part of that story.
True.
But isn't a critical internal voice kind of necessary so we don't do the exact same stupid thing again? Like, if I blow my life savings on a terrible investment, shouldn't I be a little hard on myself so I actually remember the lesson?
It's a fair question, but it comes back to the difference between analyzing a failure and identifying with it.
Okay, break that down for me.
Forgiveness in this context does not mean amnesia. It doesn't mean saying the terrible investment was a good idea. It means releasing the emotional debt you are holding against yourself.
Releasing the debt.
Yes. Guilt is useful for about 5 minutes. It signals that your actions didn't align with your values. But prolonged self-punishment is actually a perverse form of ego protection.
Wait, what? How is punishing yourself protecting your ego?
Think about it. If you are busy beating yourself up, you are distracted from doing the actual terrifying work of trying again and risking another failure.
Oh my God.
Self-flagellation feels productive, but it's paralyzing. By forgiving yourself, you are forcing yourself to drop the emotional baggage so you can clearly look at the mechanics of the mistake.
Wow. That is a phenomenal insight. Self-punishment is basically distraction from the work of changing.
Exactly, because if you don't forgive yourself, you are constantly tearing that psychological wound open, preventing it from ever forming the protective scar tissue we talked about earlier.
Wow. Okay, so that perfectly sets up the fourth discipline. Speaking kindly to yourself. And again, this isn't just about reciting cheesy affirmations in the mirror. It's about recognizing the sheer power of your internal narrative.
Your internal dialogue literally programs your reticular activating system, which is the part of your brain that filters information.
Filter, okay.
If your internal voice is constantly critical, constantly pointing out every missing petal and every awkward scar, you are actively training your brain to scan the environment for more evidence that you are failing.
You're programming yourself to see failure.
Right. You create a hostile internal environment. Self-love requires you to deliberately rewrite that code. When you speak kindly to yourself, especially after a failure, you are signaling to your nervous system that you are safe.
Which keeps your executive function online, like we said earlier.
Exactly. It brings it all full circle.
It's really just treating yourself with the same baseline respect you would offer a colleague or a friend. I mean, you wouldn't look at a friend who just bought a planner to organize their life, used it for 3 days, and gave up by January 12th, and tell them they are a worthless failure.
Of course not.
You'd laugh, say it happens to the best of us, and ask how you can help them try something else. But we are absolutely brutal to ourselves over those exact same low-stakes human moments,
We really are.
which makes the fifth discipline in the text so vital,
Mm.
celebrating small victories.
And we desperately need to reset our baseline for what constitutes a victory in the first place.
Yeah, we set the bar way too high.
Culturally, we reserve celebration for the macro events, the degree, the promotion, the marriage. But if human growth is cellular, if it happens bloom by bloom, then a single petal opening is a massive physiological achievement.
A macro achievement on a micro scale.
Exactly. Waking up and choosing not to engage in a toxic thought loop. That is a victory. Setting a small boundary with a demanding coworker. Victory.
And it is the consistent acknowledgement of those micro victories that actually builds the dopamine momentum needed for the larger transformations. You kind of have to engineer your own momentum.
You do. You have to feed the engine. And that brings us to the final and undoubtedly the most difficult directive in the source material.
Let's hear it.
Recognizing your inherent worth regardless of external validation. This is the absolute bedrock of radical self-acceptance.
It is so incredibly hard, though, because everything in our society is gamified to provide external validation.
Everything.
Likes, views, performance reviews, salary bands, credit scores.
It is entirely gamified. But the text warns that if your self-love is tethered to those external metrics, it will permanently be unstable.
So you can't control them.
Because external validation is fundamentally outside of your control. The market can crash, algorithms can change overnight, relationships can end.
True.
True self-love, as the text defines it, is recognizing that your value is not a variable. Simply by existing, by being a breathing, complex human being, navigating this difficult world, you possess a baseline worth that cannot be augmented by success or diminished by failure.
Wow. So looking at these disciplines together, interrupting the comparison loop, honoring your unique timeline, abandoning self-punishment so you can analyze mistakes clearly, rewriting your internal dialogue, resetting your dopamine through small wins, and anchoring into your inherent worth.
It's quite the list.
It is. And what the text is really showing us is that self-love is not a feeling that just washes over you one day while you're at a spa. It is a daily, active, and honestly, often exhausting choice.
It is a verb.
It is a verb. It is a practice of tending to your own messy, organic garden.
That is the ultimate pragmatic takeaway. It requires vigilance. But it is a gentle vigilance. It is a commitment to showing up as an ally to yourself exactly as you are, day after day, storm after storm.
This has been a truly profound deep dive.
Yeah.
Let's briefly recap the journey we've taken through this material today.
Let's do it. Okay.
We started by dismantling the deficit model of self-improvement, realizing that transformation actually begins with radical acceptance, because fighting your current reality just wastes the cognitive energy you need to actually grow.
Right.
Then we explored the bloom metaphor, learning that psychological change cannot be rushed like a digital software update. It is an organic, cellular, and deeply patient unfolding.
Bloom by bloom.
Exactly. Then we embrace the rugged reality of the scar metaphor, understanding that our traumas and setbacks aren't defects, but biological and psychological adaptations that build resilience.
They map our survival.
Yes. And finally, we broke down the rigorous daily disciplines required to put this theory into practice. The overarching, undeniable message is clear. The world does not need some optimized, perfectly curated version of you. It needs the authentic, scarred, unfolding you.
And it is vital to remember that your worth is not something you have to earn through relentless productivity or perfection.
Definitely.
If you found value in our deep dive today, if the friction of the source material sparked something in you, the challenge is to actually embody this discipline today. And beyond that, consider sharing these concepts with someone else in your life. We are all swimming in the exact same waters of comparison, and we all occasionally need a reminder of our own inherent worth.
To bring it all home, I want to leave you with a direct, incredibly inspiring closing quote from the source text, because I think it distills this entire conversation beautifully. Your scars do not diminish your beauty, they reveal your strength. Your flaws do not define your value, they make you uniquely human. Keep growing, keep believing, keep becoming.
That is a phenomenal encapsulation by the author. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building purely on the botanical mechanics we've explored today.
Oh, I like this.
So, the source tells us that a flower unfolds one petal at a time, bloom by bloom. But if we consider the reality of organic growth, if we are constantly unfolding, adapting, and accumulating new scars day by day, maybe there is no such thing as a final perfect bloom.
Oh, wow.
Right. Perhaps the truest, most radical form of self-love is realizing that this messy, beautiful process of unfolding isn't just a phase you have to get through to reach the good part. It is the destination itself.
The process is the destination.
Yeah.
You never actually arrive because you are already exactly where you need to be.
Exactly.
It brings us right back to that very first question that hooked us. What if the greatest transformation in your life doesn't begin when you become someone new, but when you finally accept the person you've always been? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep unfolding. We'll catch you next time.